Hi. So, just got out of an early screening for Talk to Me by A24, and thank you to them, by the way, for the tickets to the early screening. So this movie is coming out in theaters next week on July the 28th. It is July the 19th, so getting to see it a little early, which was nice. The movie itself is a small-time horror flick out of Australia. The basic premise is that there are a group of teenagers that come in contact with a supernatural object, and then due to their contact with it, that they start to experience, we'll say, supernatural or otherworldly events, and then a kind of devolvement into madness that succumbs from their contact with the object. In general, I would say that the last couple of A24 horror films that I've seen, and I've not seen all of them, have been fairly mixed. Hereditary is definitely my favorite of the A24 films in the horror genre. The acting in that film was particularly spectacular. I definitely think it got robbed of a lot of award season notoriety that it deserved. This film, I definitely don't think was up in that realm. You know, obviously I think that the film represented a lot of metaphors for different things that were occurring in the film, like supernatural elements, possession elements, while dealing with the trauma of the characters themselves. The main actress is dealing with a traumatic event that occurred in her life, and it's kind of a continual thread that rolls through the entire movie. The primary issue that I have with the film is that while it does have some effective elements, I don't think it really drives towards anything. You know, obviously it shows the pathway that the character is on and the things that she deals with. Obviously dealing with her own trauma in the midst of this event occurring, and her own trauma trying to kind of pushes the story forward in some of the decisions that she makes. But I don't find that they were particularly effective. I don't think that they did enough showing you the character and like why we should care about her or why we should care about the trauma that she had. Again, you know, it's a fairly relatable thing, the issue that she goes with, without going into spoilers specifically in the movie. But I just don't think that there was enough time spent developing the character and her backstory to make us really gravitate. And there's a scene specifically, probably about 3/4 of the way through the film, that you could tell is really meant to be an impactful scene. And it takes its time, it breathes a little bit, but because of the non-development of the character and her backstory prior to that scene, I just don't think it landed particularly as hard as it could have, or maybe it was meant to hit. The supporting casts were fine. I think, you know, oddly enough, it's horror movies when you're dealing with teenagers are always a struggle, and you know, characters have to make decisions to do things that don't always make sense. I think that this is probably another movie that's a prime example for the fact that teenagers make terrible decisions just in general. I would largely argue that there are probably some behaviors that take place that a lot of horror films like to do, where characters make decisions or do things that are not realistic. I think that there are certain things that occur in the movie that a normal, rational person would shy away from, that would have kind of deterred the pathway of the story itself. There's also a couple other story elements that are not really particularly well explained, especially when you see a repetition of certain actions take place. So obviously a lot of those things are left up to the viewer's imagination or left up to interpretation, but I think it could have maybe spelled motivations a little bit more clearly had that been developed a little bit more. So overall, the movie was short. I think it was only about an hour and a half. It wasn't particularly long, and I think it could have used a little bit more development again in the main character's plot line, the arc that she dealt with, and just kind of seeing some type of point to the movie. It's not like Hereditary, where you kind of see the general through line of why all these events occurred and what it was driving towards. It wasn't particularly strong in that effect. So I think as a screening, you know, it was an interesting thing to go to. Would I spend money on going to see it again, or would I recommend other people going to see it? Probably not. Again, I think that the performances were fine. The cinematography was quite dark. It was competently filmed, we'll say, and you know, some of the special effects of the more supernatural elements were interesting, but nothing groundbreaking. So I would say If you're a fan of, you know, horror and you just kind of enjoy a tense movie, you might enjoy it. It's not particularly scary at all. It's more of just kind of a tense, somewhat grotesque thing in certain instances. I will say that there was one particular scene where you could tell that they were tapping into some Evil Dead type vibes, which I enjoyed particularly, but it didn't last for very long, unfortunately. So I would say if you're a fan of horror, you might enjoy the movie. Otherwise, it's not something I would probably recommend. It is short, but I don't think it's going to grab you like some of their other prior work that they've done within the A24 studio. So that's my review of Talk to Me here in 2023, and I'll see you guys next time.